2,000 years ago, there was a man, and he was in a boat. He was there with his brother. He was an ordinary fisherman. Many, many fishermen were out where they were living. Just an ordinary person. He had a brother, he had a wife, he had a mother-in-law, he had a job, he had a family. And yet, nearly 2,000 years later, we're going to spend the whole of this service thinking about him. I wonder what made that fisherman so important and different from all the other fishermen who were out fishing that night or the day before, the night that followed afterwards. So this person was out fishing, and when he came back and he was in his boat, somebody came up and got in his boat, actually. I do sometimes wonder what he thought about somebody getting into his boat. But the person who got in his boat was a person called Jesus. This is somebody that he'd heard of before. He might possibly have met before, we don't know. He might have discovered some of the things that he was doing. But at that moment, Jesus got into his boat, talked to other people, but talked to Peter and said to Peter, "Come and follow me." And Jesus got out of Peter's boat, and Peter got out of Peter's boat, and his brother got out of Peter's boat, and he followed. And it's because of all of his experiences that followed having met Jesus that we have lots to learn from him. He had 3 amazing roller coaster years with Jesus. Really, really good times. Times when he saw Jesus do amazing things. More than 5,000 people being fed with just a small amount of food. Or the time that Jesus was on a mountain and he changed completely in the way that he looked, and Peter was there and saw what went on. Fantastic times. Times when he saw Jesus being concerned with his family. His mother-in-law was very ill, and Jesus went and made her better. Really, really high points in his life. The top of the roller coaster. But Peter was a person like you and me. He was a person who misunderstood, who didn't have a clue what was going on. He was a person who got things wrong. He was a person who had a strong character, and that came out too strongly sometimes. So that he'd spent 3 years with Jesus, and yet at the crunch time, when Jesus needed friends with him, Peter said, "I don't know Jesus. I've never heard of him. Jesus, who are you talking about?" And left Jesus to his fate. Peter, who, on one of the heights, had seen in Jesus that Jesus wasn't just a man, but was the Son of God. Jesus said to him, "Who do people say I am?" And then that crunch question which comes to all of us, "Who do you say I am?" And Peter said, "You are the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the living God." That was one day. Several months later, Jesus? No, never really heard of Jesus because he was too scared. And who would blame him? Peter, who didn't understand when actually Jesus' appearance changed on top of that mountain. What was going on? And he just blurted out all sorts of extraordinary things. "I'm going to go and make a tent for you. I'm going to make somewhere for you to sit and live." Really, really peculiar things. How can we relate to that? You know, we open our mouths and something comes out and you think, why did I say that? That was a bizarre thing to say when he didn't understand. Or Peter, when Jesus said, "I must wash your feet." And Peter said, No, you don't wash my feet, I wash yours. No, said Jesus, I wash your feet. And then poor Peter, I always feel so sorry for him. He said, well, in that case, can you wash all of me? And Jesus says, no, I'm not doing that either. I'm just doing the feet. I mean, the poor man, I do have some sympathy with him. Peter, who got things so right and so wrong. And then when Jesus came back to life, one of the first people on the scene, not the absolute first, for that's where women were. Peter, early on the scene. Peter, who at Pentecost was the person who stood up and proclaimed, this is the Holy Spirit that the prophets were speaking of so many centuries previously. And Peter, who went on to be important in that early church. And Peter, who also, if you look through some of the letters that are in our New Testament, actually went on getting things wrong. You know, some of his beliefs had to be corrected. Actually, no, we shouldn't be thinking that, we should be thinking that, which makes him completely human. We can relate to that, can't we? We who have been following Christ for years and years and years and years, and still we get it wrong. I was really struck by the prayer that was just prayed. We come to worship with baggage because we still get it wrong. Peter was an ordinary fisherman who, because he met with Jesus, was taken to these great heights of understanding. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. All that we need to hold on to is in that phrase, isn't it? And yet, several years later, is still getting things wrong. Peter is the person that we will be thinking about today in different ways, which I will explain in a moment or two. But the important thing about Peter isn't so much what he did, what he thought, what he said, the role model or not that he is for us. The key thing is that his life was changed because Jesus said, "Follow me." He got up, he got out of his boat, and he followed Jesus up and down, and up and down with Jesus. So before we think about our actual service and how it's going to progress, we're going to sing again now, "O Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder." That is our next one, is that right? Somebody can announce. Yes, so I'm thinking here that this is something that Peter would sign up to, you know, for all his misunderstandings, for all the things that didn't go as he planned or thought should. Then sings my soul, my Saviour God to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art. If we're able to, we stand to sing. In a normal service, whatever that might be, at this point, somebody would stand at the front and talk to you, mostly. Sometimes there's a bit of interaction, sometimes there's a bit of group work and so forth, but largely it comes from the front. This morning, we're going to do something very different. So you might say to me, why are we going to do this? The reason we're going to, there are a couple of reasons why we are. Firstly, because we all know now, don't we, that we learn differently. Some people learn by listening, some people by looking, some people by doing. And most of our church services only cater for people with one type of learning. And I think that most people actually learn a lot from actually doing things. When our children and young people go out to do things, I look at them with envy and I think how I'd like to be with them, because they hear a story and they do something, and that means that they're learning alongside it. So that's one reason for doing it. And the second reason is this, and I think I feel this very strongly, that we are Christians together on a journey, and we learn from each other. It isn't just one person who stands at the front who says, this is what God is saying. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but there needs to be a time when we can actually sit down with other people and learn from their experiences and their insights of God. So today is an opportunity to do that. So I'm going to explain to you the different things that you can choose to do. As I say this, I do know that for some people this sounds, it doesn't make you feel very comfortable, because you're going to do something different, and that always puts us outside of our comfort zones. If I was honest and sitting where you're sitting, I would be thinking, oh my goodness, can't she just talk to me for a bit, and then I'll sing a hymn, and then I'll go home. Maybe the very fact that it's uncomfortable means that we're having to put a bit more into it, and therefore hopefully we'll get a bit more out of it. However, if this makes you feel really, really uncomfortable and you don't want to do any of these things, that is absolutely fine. Do not feel under any pressure to do any of these things. If you want to sit here in church for half an hour and just think whatever you're going to think, or do handstands while nobody's watching, that's absolutely fine. However, I do hope that there will be something in what we have on offer that you will enjoy, and you'll be able to sort of get something out of. So this is called a zone service. This is because at this point, well, in a minute or two, you choose which zone you want to go to, and you go to it and you do it for about half an hour. This is different from the Messy Church service, whereby we went around all the different activities. This time you need to make a decision and stick with it for half an hour. Maybe we'll do one of these again. So if you think, oh, actually I really wanted to have done that, you know how it is if you go out for a meal and somebody chooses a dish and you think, really wish I'd chosen that one. Well, we might do it again, so then you can rethink. But some of these things you get into and it doesn't really work to come out of. So if you could stick with it, unless you absolutely hate it, but you won't. So then, Peter. All of the things we're doing today are focused, nearly all the things we're doing are focused on Peter. So these are the things to choose from. It's possible there's a PowerPoint to put up at this point. It's looking to me like there isn't. Absolutely fine. I'll talk you through it. So, first of all, if you go to the Crawley Down room, I'm going to say these rooms, I haven't got a clue where they are, but you probably do. Okay, down, just, you know, when you go and look for one, just speak to anybody else, but not me, because I'll be saying somewhere else. Anyway, Crawley Down room. If you would like to, this is an opportunity to do a take time meditation. Many of us have heard about take time. I suspect not all of us have ever tried it. This is an opportunity, just a bit of space, some words will be fed in, take you where you will meet Jesus and hear what he has to say. You don't have to say anything, it's not threatening in any way, just a bit of time for you to spend with you and Jesus, and a particular story about Jesus and Peter. So that might be what you'd like to do. You might have heard about Take Time and think, what on earth is this thing? This is an opportunity to find out without actually having to turn up at a different time. Alternatively, you might like to go to the roundabout room, somewhere. That way. In the roundabout room, you will find some chairs put out and two sets of identical pieces of paper, blue and pink, I think they are. And on these different pieces of paper are poems and readings about Peter. So this is your opportunity. If you just want to be completely quiet, nobody's feeding anything into you other than what you want, just go and sit there, pick up one. Oh, look at this. Amazing. Fantastic. What a wonderful church. The readings are there, you pick up, read it, you might want to read it over and over and over again, and you might want to put it down and pick up another one. You could talk to other people about it, but I'm really thinking this is a bit of time of quiet. So somebody else is feeding in some ideas of stories, different stories about Peter and Jesus. Or you could choose to go to the Wesley room, we'll get the instructions in a minute perhaps, where we will be having a Bible study, again about one of the stories of Peter and Jesus. So together we will be studying a passage and finding out what each other think. So if that's what you'd like to do, then head that way. Alternatively, you might like to be a bit more creative, in which case I do know where this room is. You need to head to the Lingfield Hall, which is like all the way through the cafe and round to the right, where you could, there is some craft all to do with fish and some painting and so forth, if you'd like to do that. There are also some games, there's a word search. There are also pieces of card and some paints and also some paintings of Peter, the way in which other people have depicted what Peter might look like. So you might like to look at those, talk about them, discuss them, and then you've got some time to produce your own picture, which might be an actual picture of a person, or it could just be, what was the Transfiguration like? It could just be a lot of light, or it could, however you might picture any of those scenes. So for children and adults, there are things to be doing in the Lingfield Hall. And finally, if all you need, there's one other. If you would like to get outside, now that it's not raining, and you'd like to go for a walk, gather in the little lobby out here, and there's a recreation ground 4 minutes away. So as a group, you could head off there. And as you walk, 2 things you could be thinking of. Do I see anything that reminds me of Peter? Maybe a family together, and that reminds us of his family life. Or a piece of wood reminds us of a boat. A dead fish. Seems unlikely, but you never know. So you could look out for that and bring it back. Or you could be thinking, is there anything as I walk along the street and into the recreation ground that reminds me of something I'd like the church to pray for? So, creation, lots of things to pray about creation, for example, or whatever it might be. And lastly, if you don't do any of those and you don't want to sit in the church on your own doing a handstand, in the cafe down here, there are the Sunday newspapers. The coffee will be there, or means to make coffee. Just go and take half an hour to yourself, because actually your life is full, your mind is full, and the idea of just, I'm in God's presence and I'm reading the Sunday papers, and I'm also praying really hard that it's not going to rain in Manchester at Old Trafford. Then please, if we could all head that way and issue those prayers, that would be really good. Perhaps we could just go through those. I'll just leave them going through so you can choose. You might want to go with somebody to a zone, or you might think, no, they're all heading off in that direction, I want to do this thing. Take a moment or two to think, what are those things you'd like to do? We're going to do them for about half an hour. Just to say, when you get to your zone, the first thing I'd like you to do is just to go around and say your names. It's very easy to think that everybody knows the names of everybody, and actually there's somebody there who doesn't, but they can't say that they don't because they've shown up as the only person. So that's just one thing to say. And at the end, if there could just be one person from each group who could do a really quick feedback of what you did, that would be great. Okay. I'm going to leave it to you now. The zones will keep flipping through, but Bible study, take time, Sunday newspapers, go for a walk, craft in the hall, all sorts of things. Off you go.